Welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and this evening, once again, we're looking at Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, and specifically the section on Bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and the various ways in which we can produce that awakening mind that's necessary in order to become a Buddha. We can't become a Buddha without that awakening mind, without the mind that aspires to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We can't become a Buddha, and we aren't even really considered a Mahayanist until we enter that door into the Mahayana, which is Bodhicitta. So we see that it's just so important if we want to have a complete end of our suffering and have the most amount of happiness we possibly can have. And we want to then be able to help produce that state in other beings. We have to produce this mind that aspires to enlightenment, because the only destination that will fulfill all those needs is Buddhahood. And without the practice of bodhicitta, Buddhahood is impossible. It's necessary to first generate that mind that aspires to enlightenment that we find at the path of accumulation. And then with that mind that aspires to enlightenment, that serves as the motivation, begin to investigate reality and begin to accumulate merit, so we can eventually get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience through this process of the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. And once we achieve that no more learning, we'll have achieved the state of omniscience by relying upon method and wisdom. And there's no other way to achieve that state of omniscience without relying on both method and wisdom. So therefore, it's necessary to generate the great compassion in the mind that aspires to enlightenment for us to be able to have the collection of method and engage in the bodhisattva practices of the 6 perfections, or 5 of the 6 perfections and so forth. And then unite that with the 6th perfection of wisdom to be able to have a full realization of all the qualities, all the excellent qualities that one could have perfected. So sometimes we say the 6 perfections, sometimes we say the 10 perfections, 6 perfections for ripening our own perfection, and then the 4 other perfections when we say 10 perfections to help ripen others' potential. So we'll get into some of those points more later on, but I just feel so fortunate that once again, we're still alive. And now we've moved forward into another topic in Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. We have qualified teachers to help aid us in our journey through investigating this. And it's so wonderful that we have this human basis that has ears that can hear these things, and we have a human mind, and we've received enough, education and so forth that we could really analyze these teachings. So we need to be so grateful every moment that we have this opportunity, and we have the basis from which this opportunity can be taken advantage of. We have this human basis, we have the opportunity to become a Buddha, and we have an excellent basis. We have a good boat to get to the other side of the shore, and that's that human basis that we currently possess. We don't have any idea when we're going to get it again. We have no idea when we'll meet with the Mahayana teachings again. And right now we have them in front of us. And if we don't do the work now, we'll have to experience future sufferings in dependence upon not doing the work, in dependence upon doing that which is the opposite of these practices. And then eventually we'll wind up in another state, and who knows if we'll have even all of the same factors that we have right now. Maybe some of them won't even be complete, and it'll be much harder for us to even engage in or learn these things. And at this very moment, we have this human basis that allows us, because of the things that we possess, our mind and so forth, and all the conditions around it, to practice the Dharma and to practice a pure Dharma that doesn't leave anything out, where there aren't any errors. Khenser Geshe Wandak was so kind to us to be able to present us with a Dharma that has absolutely nothing missing from it, that allows us to achieve no impartial results. The teaching that Rinpoche gave us was a teaching that would allow us to achieve perfection, no impartial results. And for that, I just want to say thank you, as always, to Khenser Geshe Wandak, and may we never, ever forget that he is that seed. He is the source of all of that is good, all of the good that we will achieve, all the suffering that we will relinquish will be a result of having relied upon a teacher such as Khenser Geshe Wandak. And in my case, my opinion, because I'm speaking, to multiple people, the source, the ultimate Kensho Geshe Wandak is the root source to me of all good I will accomplish and all suffering I will relinquish. So I'm so fortunate to be able to develop a relationship with a teacher where I really see that being. I see Kensho Geshe Wandak as that root, and I pray that I'm never separated from him because of the fact that I know that root is necessary in order to grow a tree. And if the root is medicine, then the branches and the trees will be medicine. So if the root is poisonous, the branches and the trees will be poisonous, as Lord Atisha said. So we're starting with a root of a very pure being, Kensho Geshe Wandak in this case. And I was so fortunate to have met with him. And I know that root will produce the fruit of perfection, will produce the fruit of medicine. And I'm just so glad that I didn't rely upon a teacher who gave bad instructions or gave inappropriate instructions and then led me into a poisonous result. Because the roots were poisonous. So that's why when we talk about this relying on the teacher and the qualities of the teacher and the necessity of having a good teacher, it's because our future depends upon it. And what they tell us will dictate what our future will be if we practice it. And if they tell us something wrong, then we will practice wrong and we won't end up at the destination that we want because wrong practices don't equal the correct destination. They equal the wrong destination. So we're so fortunate that we had a pure teacher that is the root of all of our excellent qualities to rely upon in this life. And then we now know that we connect to that omniscient being in all of our lives. We know that Kensho Geshe Wandak is still right here with us at all times, here supporting us, here so happy that we're engaging in virtuous practices, and here to also maybe emanate and provide us with other explanations from other teachers and so forth. So what a wonderful occasion to be able to hear the words of Kensho Geshe Wandak that were passed down to him, not out of some magical place, but were passed down to him from his teachers, Kensho Pema Jetsun and Shapugen Nima and Gen Uzir and Trijong Rinpoche and Ling Rinpoche and all of Gen Lachap and all of Kensho Geshe Wandak's teachers that he knew were the source of all of his good, that allowed him then to be able to present us with the pure Dharma. So we should all really rejoice in the fact that we've got this human basis. We've got the opportunity to practice the Dharma. We've had the pure Dharma presented to us from a pure teacher. And now we're being presented with Bodhicitta teachings, which are very, very rare to hear. Most people in their lifetime will never hear of the word Bodhicitta. Most people will never hear of this idea of doing everything in a pathway, doing everything you do day and night for the sake of others. Most people won't hear of that making any sense to them. And we're so fortunate to be able to hear those words tonight. So let's start by getting into the 7-point Vajra posture. So it's important that we get into this position and we start to identify objects of meditation that we're going to think about, make sure that we're thinking about those and nothing else. And then when our mind strays from those objects of meditation, we correct it a little bit. So while we're getting into the posture, then doing the breathing and the visualization, and then listening to the somewhat guided meditation, if you will, we're trying to focus on that solely. We're really trying to hone our minds into that, free of excitement, free of laxity. When we're trying, to gain calm abiding and so forth, those are obstacles. Free of the obstacle of having our pot upside down or a hole in it or having contaminated water in it. Free of all of those things. We need to really try to focus our mind in, listen to these things, absorb these things, make them part of us so that our motivation right from the beginning of this teaching is appropriate. So we hear these things properly, we analyze these things properly, and then we eventually can meditate upon these things properly and familiarize ourselves again and again and again with them because we'll have heard them properly and we'll have analyzed them properly. So we'll know what we're familiarizing our minds with and trying to exactly what we're trying to realize, exactly where we're trying to be. So with that in mind, let's get into that 7-point Vairocana posture, the intentional position that allows for clarity of our mind, that tells us that we're getting into position to engage in some sort of virtuous practice, to engage in something where we will gain wisdom, we'll gain insight into it, and an unwavering wisdom. So we want clarity of mind in order to make that wisdom very, very clear. And we will then practice a little bit of calm abiding, a calming of our mind in order for it to be very stable. So we want, if you have you're trying to read a book in a room and you light a candle, you want that candle to be very bright to be able to read that book. But if the wind's blowing and blowing the candle around, if it's not steady, then you're not really able to read the book. So you want to be able to unite this clarity with this kind of stability at the same time, so that clarity can really be understood. So let's try to get that clarity, and then let's try to focus our minds in on just doing virtue, on just what we're hearing with the prayers, on just what the guided meditation is, just focusing our mind just on those objects of observation alone, and trying to stay away from any other objects, those objects that before we came in here, we were thinking about, that we were so attached to, and those objects that we were thinking about that we dislike so much before we came in. We're trying to get our mind to a more neutral space where we can grow actual realistic motivation, from a motivation that actually comes from a place that could develop into this pure mind of a Buddha, that could proliferate into the Buddha's mind. So let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. We put our legs into the Vajra posture, if possible. And we put our hands in our lap with our right on top of our left, with our back straight like a stack of coins, with our shoulders in a very comfortable position, allowing for our arms to bow out. Again, remembering, if we can't get into the Vajra posture, we can do the half Vajra or half lotus posture, or just cross our legs or put our feet on the floor. So now we have our legs in the Vajra posture with our hands right on left with our thumbs touching, almost like a diamond, with our thumbs up in our lap. So our legs and our hands and our back straight like a stack of coins, and our shoulders comfortable with our arms bowed out, our head slightly tilted down, our eyes slightly open, focusing basically a 45-degree angle down at the tip of our nose, and then our mouth in a very, very comfortable position, with our tongue on the top, with basically against our teeth. And this allows for the water circulation and the breathing in and out of the nose. And also this posture of your mouth also not only allows it not to get too full of saliva, it also allows it not to get too dry. So we're always trying to be able to sit for longer periods of time in meditation, and these kind of physical sensations can become an obstacle. We're trying to get rid of physical sensations. We're trying to meditate with our mental consciousness alone. So therefore, we're creating all of the conditions around us that are conducive physically, and then the environmental conditions conducive around us to being able to do this practice. So having the tongue on the roof of the mouth creates one of those conditions that would allow us to sit for hours at a time. Once we get to the point where we have calm abiding and could actually hold an object of observation for 4 hours, it says, without wavering off of that object. If you think you may have calm abiding, check it out. See if you can take an object of observation and hold it without moving to any other object, without having any excitement or laxity, in a subtler, coarse way, for 4 hours straight. So that's what we will get if we continue to do these practices. So we get into that 7-point Vairocana posture, and then we make an 8th point of breathing through our nose. I'm breathing in a very comfortable fashion, not breathing in too aggressively, but not breathing in so shallow we feel as though we're drowning. We want to just take the breath all the way to the top, fill up our lungs, and then exhale. And we want to focus only on the breath as we're breathing in and breathing out. And we can count that breath just to kind of gauge and keep ourselves in check that we're focusing on the breath because we've gone up in a number. And it allows us to, have some mindful conscientiousness, introspection to the object of observation, to make sure that we haven't forgotten it. What that object is, to make sure we haven't lost that object at all. Again, we are going to breathe in and out through our nose and bring it all the way to the top of the breath, bring it all the way to the bottom of the breath in a very even fashion, not in a forced way, not in a too subtle of a way, just in a very natural fashion. Breathing in, breathing out, one, breathing in, breathing out, two. If it's more natural, say breathing in, one, breathing out, breathing in, two, whatever is more natural for you. So we'll focus on that breath. Again, all of the sense consciousness is shut off. You're trying to focus solely on this mental consciousness. The image in your mental consciousness, the focus, the object of observation is the breath going in and out. And now combined with the breathing in and out, we imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us, about 2 inches or so tall, thumb's height, about 2 feet, 1.5 feet or 2 feet away from us at our eye level. And we imagine Buddha Shakyamuni there in all of his radiance, not in like a normal human being form, in a light body, but an actual being in front of us, a 3-dimensional being. So now we're focusing on the breath, in, out, one. And the whole time we're doing that, we're visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us. And how detailed we make that visualization is really up to the individual. And if you have another object of observation that you usually use to gain single pointed concentration, calm abiding, please by all means use that object. We're saying Buddha Shakyamuni because most of the texts say because Buddha Shakyamuni is the ultimate being, is the conqueror, is the protector, is the one gone to bliss. By relating to Buddha Shakyamuni, we're always accumulating merit. So we're using an object of observation that is an incredible amount of merit, and it stamps in our minds this being we want to become as we're focusing on them over and over and over again. It's like a hero almost to us. So let's do that visualization. We'll for a moment or two, breathing in and out and visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us. Begin to think about your own individual suffering and what you've experienced. Suffering of pain, which is called the suffering of suffering, the general pains, the headaches, the sicknesses, illness, uncomfortable feelings, being separated from things you don't want to be separated from, not getting what you want, all of these things, these pains of birth, pains of aging, pain of death. Think about these individual sufferings that you've heard about, experienced, or will have to experience. Think about the various sufferings that you'll have to endure as a hell being in the 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, as a hungry ghost, or as an animal. We've read all about them in the small scope. The sufferings of heat, sufferings of being frozen, sufferings of being hungry, the suffering of being thirsty, the suffering of being used and abused, the suffering of fearing others will eat you. Think about the suffering in the higher realms. Those beings think that they've got it made, just as you have in the past, only to find out that an immense amount of suffering was right around the corner. And when those beings realize that their state isn't permanent, immense amounts of suffering happen. The demigods are constantly at war and full of jealousy because they aren't quite as good as the gods. And you will have to experience all those types of suffering if you die with attachment and are born again in cyclic existence. And will you be? The answer is yes. If you have attachment, you will be born again. It's a sign of it. We recognize that the Buddha stated that the cause of all of these different realms of cyclic existence, the cause of the 3 realms of the desire realm, form, and formless realm, the cause of the 6 realms of the hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, and God, were all caused by ignorance. All the sufferings were caused at grasping at an I, self-grasping ignorance, that then thought incorrectly. Afflictions arose from and contaminated arose, and then our actions turned into suffering because the results were concordant with the causes. And the Buddha stated that the cause of all of our suffering, the cause of the suffering, the suffering of change, and the pervasive compounded suffering is and always will be ignorance. Then the Buddha gave us good news and stated that ignorance can end, therefore a cessation of suffering can occur. The Buddha stated that he knows it's possible because he did it. And he's a reliable guide for us. And the Buddha stated that there is a pathway you have to practice, that those who've seen reality know. A superior pathway. So then we feel a sense of relief because we can engage in a pathway to get rid of the cause of all of our sufferings and therefore get rid of all of our suffering. So we should feel a sense of relief and then an urgency to definitely emerge, an urgency to do something about it, to definitely get out, an urgency to practice those pathways that are presented, those superior pathways. And then we start to think about others we care about. We start to think about our loved ones, our mother, our father, our brother, our sisters, our wife, our husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, all these people we care about so much, and recognize that everything we just thought about pertains to them too. Think about beings that are neutral to us. We think about those beings that we consider enemies and try to right-size that relationship with them in our minds. Recognize that since beginningless time, all sentient beings have been our mothers, have been our brothers, have been our sisters, have taken care of us in our most vulnerable time. Every one of them. And now, maybe I've had an unpleasant interaction with one of those kind beings because my karma has forced me to see it as such. So that poor being I'm taking my karma out on was so kind to me in the past, so loving to me, would have done anything for me. I start to think about how many of those sentient beings will have access to the Buddha Dharma. Start to think how nice it would be if they had happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and the causes of happiness. I'll be a cause for them to have that. And then we say to ourselves, how nice it would be if they were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I'll be part of that cause. I'll make that happen. And then we say, I'll take it upon myself, this task. But we recognize that we don't even have freedom from suffering. We don't have any happiness to give. We only have contaminated happiness right now. We're stuck in the same exact situation that they are. They've been so kind to us, and we know what the solution is. And we know that only the Buddha can help us and help them. And if we really want to help them, because of our current handicap, because we're not omniscient, because we have the self-cherishing attitude, we're really far away from helping them. So we know who can help them, who can help us. And that's when we become very convinced that we must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Then we ask ourselves, how do we become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings? And the answer is we learn the pathway that leads to that state. And the only way that we can do so is by engaging in practices, by getting the wisdom arisen from hearing, contemplation, and meditation. So let us listen to these teachings tonight, recite these prayers with this attitude that I'm doing so for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm listening to this teaching, I'm analyzing this teaching so I can truly realize this teaching for the sake of all sentient beings. I need to get there as quickly as possible. The Mahayana is the way that I can get there. And if I want to get there the quickest way, I practice Vajrayana or Tantrayana. And without Bodhicitta, that's merely a dream. It's a fox pretending to be a lion. So now, imagine in the space all around us, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Kensur Geshe Wandak, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, all the holy beings, Demalocha Rinpoche, whoever your own other personal lamas are, whoever your gurus are, imagine them, whoever you find inspiration from in terms of a lama, imagine them in that space in front of you. All the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all the holy beings, the hearers, solitary realizers, all of the beings, all of those holy beings, maybe non-imaginer in the space in front of you. And imagine that those beings are all so happy. They're smiling. They're so happy that you're engaging in virtue. That's all they want you to do. Their only aim is to see you as happy as you can be and to be free from suffering. And they're seeing you do something that will make that happen. So imagine that all those holy beings are in the space in front of you, so happy with what you're doing. And then imagine that all sentient beings are all surrounding you and that you're leading them in the prayers we're about to do. You're listening to the teachings with them. Imagine that you're all beings, imagining first your friends all around you, then neutral beings all around you, then any enemies that you've transformed into a being that you would equally want to help, that you love, that you want to have free from suffering. You imagine them all around you and all other sentient beings, hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, as detailed as you can get. Imagine them all around you. And imagine them that you're leading them in this prayer. Imagine that you've led them to this teaching. You've taken each and every one by the hand and brought them here to this teaching. That all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are so happy to see all sentient beings are there to hear this teaching. And imagine as we're reciting these prayers, there's a rain of blessings, of lights and nectars coming down to all sentient beings. You can imagine white rays coming down and purifying sentient beings' body, red rays coming down, purifying sentient beings' speech, and blue rays coming down and purifying sentient beings' minds. Imagine it's just spontaneously happening. All of these nectars and lights are coming from all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all the holy beings, because of their joy. It's just emanating from them, their joy in seeing what you're doing. And imagine that all beings are being blessed as we are reciting the Heart Sutra and the rest of the prayers together. So hold this visualization the best that you can. Let's just hold on to it for a second. Think about it. Think about that we're doing this for the sake of all sentient beings. We're doing this recitation in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We're looking at the implicit and explicit meaning of the Heart Sutra for the sake of all sentient beings. We're looking at the paths that are implicitly meant of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning for the sake of all sentient beings. We're understanding the emptiness of all of those 5 paths for the sake of all sentient beings. We know the only way that we can enter the Mahayana, the only way we can become a Buddha is to get Bodhicitta. And we're at a class on Bodhicitta. We're here doing that for the sake of all sentient beings. And we recite the Heart Sutra. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. De ata om gate gate paragate parasangati buddhi soha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala jubene jodamba ne ngushe du chunga yi du jen juba bulama yi bujin zi nizong andro sola shaselo. Aga samara de shandara samara de. Agasamara Deshanara Samara Mediadon Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha Papa Gonjo Sanji Gai Demi Joji Lobodoji Mebodoji Chewodoji Jagi Bachi Medovishi Tanji Ziringori Soha Girin Don Jaji Juji Wada Medon Nubejan Don Wada Dumba Don Jin Bonzon Son Georgi Dashi De Jan Den Da De Lejo. Now we'll make an offering, mandala offering of a pure universe, a perfect universe. We're imagining that we're offering that to the teacher and to the lineage that goes all the way back to Lord Buddha Shakyamuni, the teacher of our time. So we just imagine that we're offering this perfect universe to all those holy beings in order to request this teaching to be given. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Gam Niradayami. Nanye Jadan Jye Jana La Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jishi Jipe Sananji Jula Benji Sanye Jubajo. Zanye Jadan Jye Jana La Janju Badu Danye Jazuji Dagi Jishi Jipe Sananji Shela Benji Zanye Juba Jo Zanye Jodan Zanye Jana La Janju Badu Tanye Jazuji Dagi Juje Jibe Zananji Shela Benji Zanye Juba Jo. The one who has transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher Sugata and the protector, to you I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and the profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. So again, imagine all the sentient beings are around you. You've led them here. They're all so happy. You've brought them. It's been their first time. You've really been able to help them is by bringing them here to this teaching, and imagine that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are in the space all around us, and they're so happy that this is going on, and I really rejoice in the fact that you're here. I really rejoice in the fact that the holiest of beings are rejoicing in what we're doing right now. So feel good about that. Feel good that, for once we're doing something so special. And I say for once because we look at our beginningless lives. For once, right? We've had so much suffering in our life that's been brought about by not doing the right thing. So here we have an opportunity to engage in things that will really make us happy, so that in the future we won't have to experience those things we talk about in the truth of suffering. When we talk about the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, we won't have to experience those things by relying upon this practice that we're doing now. So feel so good about the fact that we're actually engaging in something for once that will produce eventually our perfection. And that's a pretty wonderful thing to be doing something that will produce your perfection. There's so many things that we do that will produce some good results, right? Some, we can, not become really perfect at too many things, right? But some good results. But to get to this state of perfection takes some serious causes and really, really specific nuances to that journey. And here we are learning about those nuances. So wonderful. And here Kala is, just as you can't see her, but she's just decided that she's going to be part of this. Here, maybe you can see her snout. And yeah, so I'm going to just try to get her to go over here. Go lie down, honey. Anyone who doesn't know, Kala was the Rinpoche's dog. Rinpoche said that he thought we really needed, we already had 3 pit bulls, which most people think is excessive. Seems excessive. Most people don't have 3 of those dogs running around their house. So Rinpoche said that he really wanted a puppy when he came. So he wanted 2 puppies. We compromised at 1 puppy. I'm being reminded. He wanted 2 puppies. He said maybe we get two little puppies would be good. And then that would have, obviously, if you do math well, then be 5. I don't even think town ordinance allows for more than 4. So I think that we, were able to compromise and get down to this 1 puppy, Kala, who is more energy than any, and more happiness and energy. Just always happy, but always energy. And just such a special dog. But sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked by Kala and the story of Rinpoche's dog. But she's so sweet. And he used to, he'd be doing his prayers and studying. And Suma, who's the tan one, you all know, the one that stayed next to him all the time, would be staying next to him wherever she would lay, like at his feet. And then this little dog, Kala, he would put up on, like, she'd crawl up and he'd grab her and he'd put her like in his, like, if you're sitting Indian style, you have a little pouch. He'd stick her, Kala, in the little, we have pictures of it, in the little pouch. And he'd just go about his business of reading his texts, and the dog would be just sitting there. And he'd just go about his business, and she'd sometimes fall asleep. So it was just so precious. Precious for her, right? That she had those moments to be getting a shower of blessings down from Rinpoche's texts as he's reading them with her right under as he's, holding her like a dear child. Yeah, we miss Rinpoche so much. But he taught us so much that we can't feel abandoned. We have to feel empowered, because that Nirmanakaya, that emanation body, was withdrawn. But the Dharmakaya and perhaps the Sambhokaya still abides, and that's still with us. We just can't see it because our karma stinks. But he's told us exactly what we do, and if we want to see it, if we want to see, if we want to meet ourselves with the omniscience, if we want our mind to be of one taste, we want our mind to be omniscience, he's taught us what to do. If we want to be able to see the Sambhokaya, to see the enjoyment body, Rinpoche didn't leave anything out. He told us exactly how we could see the Sambhokaya. And he taught us about guru devotion. He taught us about reliance on the teacher. So he showed us how we will always be with him. So it's just so precious. Okay. Panchen Sonan Drapa's general meaning of perfection. So there are five, may I repeat, five categories. I was rewatching a teaching and I was like spinning away talking, and I said there were four. So then I was mortified and wished I had better editing skills. But yes, there are five categories. I was just slipped of the tongue, which was corrected later, but five categories in Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection when we explain bodhicitta. We have the first category of basis, which we went over. We learned about the physical and mental basis for getting the aspirational bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta, which was a hot topic today. Long story. We'll just leave it at that. I spent hours on it with a couple of different people, but just so wonderful to be able to tear these teachings apart and really, really get into them. So we learned about what the physical and mental basis for getting the aspiring and engaged bodhicitta are. And then the next category among the five is the actual cause. And then there are general and specific causes. We went over the general causes of the causes, conditions, and powers, and then landed on specific causes. And then we will, so that's where we are in the outline. But the next part, number 3 in the outline, is nature. Number 4 in the outline is divisions. And then number 5 is the benefits. So these are the 5 things that we will eventually go over. We went over the benefits a little bit at the beginning of one of the other teachings as for inspirational purposes, but we'll go over them in more detail once we get to that 5th category. But now we're in number 2. We're in the second part of number 2, specific root causes, and we're in the second part of the second part of number 2, if that made any sense. So there's general and specific causes. Okay, so general causes we finished. Then specific root causes, there are 2 divisions. One is called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. It's passed down from Lord Buddha to Maitreya to Asanga to eventually Solimpa to Atisha. And that's the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, which we went over in pretty good detail already. Pretty satisfied with the amount of detail that we went over on that. And then there's the other lineage of the equalizing and exchanging self with others. And this lineage was passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri, Arya Nagarjuna, then down to masters like Shantideva, and then eventually to Solimpa, and then to Lord Atisha. And then we see the teachings, if anybody's interested, then what? They go to Drone Tompa, and then Drone Tompa, which is interesting, becomes very, very picky about who he gives this equalizing and exchanging self with others practice to. The 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment became more of the public teaching and is known to need, it is known to be a needed basis really for practicing the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. You really need a good basis in those instructions and the meaning of those instructions to be able to use this more secret, less public instruction to be able to very rapidly make very powerful amounts of realization occur in terms of love and compassion and so forth. This is creates a more kind of explosive pathway to bodhicitta because there's so much more diversity within the examples used, and then emptiness comes into play and so forth. So knowing that it is a teaching that could be very easily misinterpreted, and a teaching that if you didn't have the basis for, and then you tried to do something such as Tonglen could actually hurt you, it was kept pretty secret. And now it's funny, it's like the hottest one. Probably Tonglen's probably the hottest Buddhist practice, when you look at what most, people have had kind of access to or know about, or it's because it's kind of a nice thing to do, to take suffering and give happiness. But what isn't said is what you read in these great commentaries, that very dangerous to not have the preliminary practices that lead up to that point. The teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity are inferred, right in the mind training text, in the 7-point thought transformation by Geshe Chikawa, who came a little bit after Geshe Langritamba. It says first train in the preliminaries. And then it doesn't say mind training like the rays of the sun. In Nankipel's text, we find the preliminaries. But in a lot of the Lojong, the mind training texts, which this equalizing, exchanging self with others falls under the category of Lojong, of the mind training texts. All the mind training texts teach this practice of equalizing, exchanging self with others. And you find quite a bit of assumption made within the instruction. And when these practices are given, that you have these teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, and you have renunciation of the lower realms, and you have the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and you've renounced samsara, and you have this real definite urge, you have this definite mind that wants to emerge from cyclic existence. You have these things, so it's pre-assumed, and then you have an understanding also of emptiness. The different views, the tenets, and so forth. You have kind of once you get to equalizing and exchanging self with others, it's assumed if this practice is being taught to you, you have this basis of understanding of, beginningless lives. You have an understanding of karma and its results. You have an understanding of all sentient beings are our mother. And now it's go time, right? And you understand. So now what could you do if you had some of these more of an advanced understanding, if you were more of a sharp capacity person, right? If you were, able to put these more advanced understandings, all these understandings into play, what would you be able to do? And what it says you're able to do is take that emptiness understanding and take the understanding of all these other things and apply it to this very special practice called equalizing, exchanging self with others. So this was, again, passed down in a very secret fashion. Not secret because of miserliness or trying to keep people from the Dharma. It said secret because it wasn't for everyone. It could harm people. It could cause exhaustion. It could cause all kinds of problems with the winds and so forth, because the winds get involved with the breathing practices. And just a general depression could set in. And this general misunderstanding and a self-hatred can happen. And this is not, the self-cherishing is what we're blaming, not the self. Grasping itself, fine. Self-centeredness caused by grasping itself, point the finger at that, but not the self, not you. So you got to be very, very careful when you start to look at the downfalls of this and that. And start to point out, what the target is, the self-centeredness, and you start to try to, you can get a depression if you misunderstand it. So it's so important that you have a complete overview of all of this and a total understanding of how this works in order to do these practices. So there's different ways that you can go about explaining this. I like the way the Nalanda course has put it together in their master's program. I think it's very all-inclusive. It contains, all of the different instructions and so forth in a very nice package. So I'm going to explain it according to that method. I will, so there's 9 different categories that we say when we look at this actual practice of equalizing and exchanging self with others. So you have a lot of similarities between some of these steps and the steps you find in the 7-point cause and effect. But the intensity is a little bit different. So when you're looking at the points, you're looking at them in a much broader way. We'll get into it, and I think you'll see how less pigeonholed you are into a specific formula when you add emptiness and some other aspects to your ability to see why you would cherish others and why you would want to become a Buddha for others' sake, to cherish others, how you would quickly turn this attitude, because we cherish ourselves so much, we find ourselves so important, Really imagine if the intensity of that suddenly could just shift. You could just shift that intensity towards others and just start working. And if that was what could cure your lack of happiness, ultimately, it would be really, really potent. Because of the power behind it. So you first start, we'll probably just get into mostly the outline of it tonight and maybe the first point. I don't have a clock in front of me. I'm not sure what time it is, but so we get into the first point of the 9 is the actual equalizing self and others. Not an exchange, just important, just equalizing. All of the, even when you look at liberation in the palm of your hand, you look at the other Lam Rim texts, oral commentaries, you always see it start with this, it's like equanimity, but it's a little bit different. It's seeing that others are equally as important as you. So friends, enemies, and neutrals are equally as important as you. So you're using that establishment that kind of wipes them away, and now you're giving it more strength and saying your enemy is equally as important as you. So now you've looked at why your enemy is because they've been kind, they've been your mothers, right? And you've used that logic. Now you're saying, but hey, they're equally as important as you, and there'll be a bunch of reasons why. Of course, it's a change in attitude. I'm the most important. You're as equally as important as I am. It's a shift in an attitude, and so that's what we're shifting when we're doing mind training. We're training our minds to shift from I'm the most important to or equally important to you're the most important. That's where you end up. You're the most important. We're equally important. You're the most important. We're equally important. Then you're the most important to me, because my happiness depends on you. Okay, so so we get this first step, which we'll go into detail on, of equalizing self and others. We get this equality, this equal importance. Secondly, we reflect on the downfalls or the demerits of the self-cherishing attitude. I want to try to get all this vocabulary exact with the Nalanda course, because you have to have it exact. You can't use other lexicons or anything. So we'll try to get all of these exact. So you're reflecting on the demerits of cherishing yourself, looking at all of the miseries and all the suffering that you've ever endured is caused by self-cherishing, and improving that through a series of points that are made. So, reflecting on, meditating on the demerit of the self-cherishing attitude. And then the next is reflecting on the merit of cherishing others. So then we go through a whole bunch of reasons why it makes sense to do that. What are the reasons why cherishing others is a good thing, and so forth. So that's the third. And then we get to number 4, which is actually taking the part of the giving and taking. You do the taking first in this particular case. So then it's the actual taking on of the suffering of sentient beings. So we're imagining, we're inhaling the suffering of sentient beings in this case. And as we exhale, we imagine, let's just say we inhale. In this case, we're going to go a little quicker today. So we inhale, we're taking on the suffering of sentient beings. So it's number 4 is taking on the suffering of others with great compassion. So what is great compassion? Again, great compassion has as its object of observation all sentient beings, right? Who are our mothers, who've been so kind. We remember they're kind. We wish to repay, that we want to have happiness. We say we're going to be a cause for their happiness. We want them to be free from suffering. Want to, be a cause of their freedom from suffering. And we're becoming a Buddha for their sake. So we're taking on their suffering of those sentient beings. So we have these sentient beings who have suffering, and we're imagining that we're taking it on as we breathe in. We'll get into more details. I'm sorry if that was a little scattered. That was not in any way meant to be a meditation instruction. That was just a general aspect. We're breathing in, we're taking on the suffering, and so forth. Now giving your happiness to others with wishing them love. So then as we're exhaling, we're imagining that we're giving them all of our root virtues, all of the love. We're imagining we're sending, coolness to the hot hells. We're sending warmth to the cold hells. We're sending bodies, maybe warming them up, right? We're imagining all kinds of things. When you get into Tonglen, you read the commentaries, there is not a lack of things you imagine coming out of your nose to them and coming into your nose from them, and what happens in that process. Some texts like the Wheel of Sharp Weapons even get Yamantaka involved, and it's looked at through an even more secret way in the mind training. But generally speaking, you take on the suffering and you give the happiness. You're taking on the suffering in the form of a black light, and you're giving the happiness in the form of a white light. But it's very important, and this is a side note, but we're talking about it tonight, and we probably won't get back to this. So very important. It says in the text, you commence takingly progressively from your own side. You start with yourself. So you start by doing this practice to yourself. So you get the strength and confidence. So you are someone who can give love and take suffering on. You've got to be strong, right? You've got to make sure that you're capable. You got to take care of yourself. Self-care is important. You have to take care of this body. You have to make sure you're mentally well to be able to help all sentient beings. It says right in the Lam Rim Chemo that if you have any kind of mental illness going on or physical illness, you really should stop your meditation and fix those things and then move on. So it's important that we're doing it in that way, and we're building a strength so that we're able to do it by loving ourselves, by wanting us to be free from suffering. Because renunciation, the desire to definitely emerge, is saying, I want to get out of suffering. That has to be there if you're going to try to want to get others out of suffering. So you have to start with yourself, it says in the texts. And it also makes it less scary. It gives you more confidence, it gives you more strength. And you take on the suffering of the day, the suffering that you had a week ago, all the sufferings you can imagine. And it says go forward, the sufferings you'll have in a month, a week, a year, in future lives, and all your lives. Imagine you take it on. And then start with your friends, then move to your neutrals, and then to your enemies. Just like in the 7-point cause and effect instruction, it all kind of becomes meshed together. Advices become advices for one another. So we're not going to go more into that. And I really don't suggest people who are new doing giving and taking, and it could cause more harm than good, but to each his own. But these are the instructions of the great masters that really get familiar with the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, understand what that means and what needed to happen in order for that to work, and then throw yourself into this, and you can actually combine these two together. So then we had the giving and taking and giving practice. And then number 6 is the actual exchange of self and others. So now where you say you put others' needs before your own. Now you put others before yourself. So now you've exchanged, you've actually done it. You're giving them happiness, you're taking them suffering, they're suffering, you're giving them all of your root virtues. And now you arrive at this step where there's exchange has taken place. You actually exchange that thought. You put them first. I'm the most important, now they're the most important. It was we're the most important. Boy, I love them. I want them to take their suffering. I'll just give them all my root virtues. Now they're the most important. So this is the shift that takes place. And you can see how tricky this meditation becomes if you aren't grounded and don't understand all of the basics. So the actual exchange takes place. And then you reflect on the kindness of others in a different way, in a more grand way. In terms of dependent origination, and you get really, really into the grandness of the kindness of your friends. And before you're really focused on all sentient beings are our mother. And now you're thinking about the kindness of every sentient being in so many diverse kinds of ways. So you've gotten this mind so big where you have all their needs, right? You've now said, I've exchanged this attitude. Their needs are before mine. You know, my selfishness is now selflessness or something like this, right? I'm out. I'm putting their needs before my own. And then you're thinking, oh, how kind they are. And you're really reinforcing it. Whose needs are you putting before your own? All these kind beings. So now it's a little bit different. You're saying, okay, I'm going to change that attitude. I've given, I've taken, I've given, I'm going to change that attitude. Now I put others' needs before my own. Who are those others? Those others that have been so kind to me. So now it's making it stronger and stronger and stronger. They've been so kind to me because everything that I have, every paper that I have was dependent upon other sentient beings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, every virtue I create will be dependent upon other sentient beings. Every patience I learn will be dependent upon other sentient beings. So you start to look at this, their kindness, how kind they are to you, because it's dependence upon other sentient beings that you have happiness. Your happiness depends on them, and your ultimate happiness truly depends on them, because the bodhisattvas work for the sake of sentient beings to become a Buddha. And we need Buddhas in order to become Buddhas. And all sentient beings have Buddha nature. You know, so you start to really, really use these points of equalizing self and others to reinforce the point that there's a special kindness that all sentient beings have, and then could have if we think that they may become a Buddha before us. So that's another kind of broader way to look at it. And then you get plaksam, special, that extraordinary attitude. The extraordinary attitude, the 7-point cause and effect. Now this one is like dynamite at this point. You know what I mean? It's saying, I will do it myself. I'm going to take on the task of freeing all sentient beings from suffering, and I'm going to take them to a state of bliss. And then you say, I can't. I must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So you arrive there in a little bit of a different way, and you'll see why. It sounds similar, just in listing the 9, sounds a little similar, but when we get to this equal self and others, when we start to look at non-duality, right, and we look at self being dependent upon other, in order for there to be me, there has to be something other than me, right? So there's an interdependence there, and both lack inherent existence. There is no truly established self. There is no truly established other. Both equally have that aspect. So that starts to sound a little bit different than where you're starting from, where your friends, enemies, and neutrals, all sentient beings have been so kind to me when I was so vulnerable. Now you're seeing that this idea of self isn't even tenable. This idea of self and other, when we look at the idea of near and far, it's all in dependence upon, you know, where we are standing. It's the mountain that's far away is far away if we're far away, but if we're standing there, it's near. It's all in dependence upon, there's the relationship and interdependence that takes place. And in order for there to be self, there's other. It says in the Lama Tsongkhapa's illuminating the intent, the Omagomara self, that you know, first we, you know, grasp at as this phenomena, and then we grasp at ourselves, and then mine, right? So we have this idea that there's something other than ourselves, and we grasp at self. So we can see how other allows self to designate. Does that make sense? And is required for self to be designated. Because there couldn't be other than self, and then other requires a self to be positive, right? And vice versa. So in order for their rock to be other than me, there has to be me to be other than rock. So there's an interdependence There's a necessity of relationship there. So that this is one of the points that's made when we look at the first part of equalizing and exchanging self with others. Another point is that all sentient beings, like myself, equally want happiness. So we're just establishing equal importance. Like, why is my happiness more important than other people's happiness? Do I feel it more than they feel it when they're happy? Do I feel pain more than they feel pain, right? No, they want to be free from suffering. They want that happiness. They feel all those same things. Why is mine more important than theirs? So we ask ourselves these questions. We realize there's this, self and other self depends upon other depends upon self. Neither have any true establishment, any kind of findability. We recognize that just like ourselves, all sentient beings want to have happiness. You want to be as happy as I want to be. That's something that's very common between us. There's no difference there. If we asked everybody, how much happiness do you want, partial or all of it, we're all going to say all of it. We all have that same desire to be happy as everyone else. So we all have the same kind of feeling. And then another point that's made during this is that all sentient beings have Buddha nature. So who's the most important person in the world? If you knew that, somebody had the potential that was definite to be the greatest being in the world, the most perfect being in the world, you would look at that person as a prized possession, right? Like the world knew that this being could save everyone. Like if everyone in the world knew there was this one person who could save everyone, who could be everyone's savior, they would make sure that child, right? If they knew it when it was a child, that this child can save the world, and they knew it beyond the shadow of a doubt, they would take such precious care of that child, right? Make sure nothing happened, make sure, there was always an attendant with them, maybe making sure they have a helmet on at all times, because this is going to be the savior of the world, right? This child is going to save all of us. Likewise, all sentient beings have the potential to save all of us. All sentient beings have Buddha nature. There's no sentient being that doesn't have Buddha nature. Every being has a mental consciousness. If you have a mental consciousness, you have what is possible, which is proliferating Buddha nature, which means your mind, that mental consciousness, can mature into perfection. It's of the substance, it's of the nature that can become a Buddha. We all have that. We all have this mental consciousness that can do that. And then we have the natural Buddha nature, which is the emptiness of our mind. The Buddha's emptiness of the Buddha's mind is no difference than the emptiness of our mind. The mental consciousness the Buddha had before he was a Buddha or she was a Buddha is no difference than the mental consciousness that we have. The mind that we have, the mind is clear and knowing. The Buddha's mind before it was pure, it was clear and knowing. After it's pure, it's clear and knowing. The nature is the same, that potential is the same. We have this mental consciousness that can be transformed from a state of impurity into a state of purity. Because the antidotes to the impurity can be put forth. So each and every one of us can become a Buddha and will become a Buddha because of this mental consciousness. And every sentient being possesses a mental consciousness. Therefore, every sentient being is the most important person in the world. Every sentient being is the most important person in the world. I'm not the most important person in the world. Every sentient being is the most important person in the world, including me. We're all the most important people in the world. We're equally important because we equally have Buddha nature. We equally can become a Buddha. We equally will become a Buddha. So we look at this and we say, this person that we maybe look at as our enemy, well, they equally can become a Buddha. They may be our only hope. They equally can become a Buddha. They want to have happiness just like I want to have happiness. And then you also have all the other ammunition at this point. They've all been my mother. They've all been my brother. They've all been my sister. They've all been so kind to me, right? You have this other ammunition that you can use to establish this equality. The other one you're looking to equally benefit. This one you're looking to see that we're all equally important. Pretty similar, right? If I want to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings, I've already decided I want out of samsara. So my needs, are equally important because I can become a Buddha. But your needs are as important as my needs because you can become a Buddha. So you're the most important person in the world also. So we are all the most important people in the world when you start to look at it like that. I'm the most important person in the world. No, I'm not. You have Buddha nature. You're the most important. Wait, they also have Buddha nature. They're the most important person in the world. They also have Buddha nature. They're the most important person in the world as well. They're the most important person in the world as well. So you start to see that people are equally as important by adding in these points of view according to the Lojong teaching. So this mind training is you're trying to turn this mind. You're trying to take this self-cherishing mind through these steps that we're going through to the point where it says that, okay, we're all equally important. And then it's turning towards the point where you say, you're more important than I am. Because in order for me to fulfill my needs, I need you. You're more important than I am. In order for me to become a Buddha, I will need you as an object, as a sentient being, to save. You're as important, and you're more important than I am, because it's in dependence upon you that everything comes to me. So it's an interesting way to look at this relationship that you cultivate with sentient beings, and I think with that, maybe does anybody have any questions, first of all, about the practice? Let's start there. No questions. Okay, I really appreciate everybody listening so well to this. When we look at the first methods of the Bodhicitta training, that we went over the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we saw, how powerful that was when we started to see the levels of building up that affection for beings, this kind of equal way of wanting to benefit them, and then building up this affection, and then building up this wish to work for their welfare, and then realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And really, once we start working with that in a way where it's just, I'm not saying we have bodhicitta, but we don't need the book. We're able to just meditate on it, and it starts to become clearer and clearer. Then we can add this equalizing and exchanging self with others practice to it, and put ornaments all over that 7-point cause and effect, and eventually be able to mesh the two together, to be able to just take the swiftest path possible to bodhicitta, because we know that it's in dependence upon bodhicitta that we can enter into tantra. That if we're a bodhisattva, we can enter into a mandala. We become a bodhisattva by getting bodhicitta. And if we enter into mandala as a bodhisattva, that's our quickest route to Buddhahood. And if we can't bear the suffering of others, and we shouldn't be able to, if we've realized all of these teachings, if we've realized the 7-point cause and effect, and we've realized equalizing and exchanging self with others, we won't be able to bear the suffering of others, and we won't be able to bear waiting another minute too longer to free them and to be able to help them. So Tantrayana will be our only hope if we want to go fast as possible, and bodhicitta is our only hope if we bodhicitta and emptiness, if we want to practice Tantrayana, and starting with the bodhicitta, we really need that. We really need to, in our daily lives, do the best we can to combat those things that are enemies of the bodhicitta: our anger, our talking badly about others, right? Our harmful intent, We really need to work at that very gross, coarse level and get those things under control, so that we can bring this kind of self-cherishing attitude train to a screeching halt. And as it's, stopping, it's not going to be pretty, as I heard today in class, and that's why we're going to need to have a little bit of patience with ourselves, in order to get through this, and put the effort in order to get through this, because it's not going to be a comfortable stop to try to turn around our way of being, our angry ways and our jealous ways and our prideful ways, in order to abandon negativity and collect virtue to subdue our mind. It's going to be a process that isn't always the most comfortable, but it will be the only process that we engage in that will produce real lasting results of happiness, that will be able to produce permanent happiness, that will be able to produce a state of permanent freedom from suffering. So unfortunately, some of the work we have to get put in maybe is boring, or maybe like, why so much information? But when you start to see how all this information becomes mental transformation, it will sound like the most beautiful song you've ever heard. And I really, really pray that each and every one of us can be as enthusiastic about hearing the words of the Dharma as we are. Think about hearing at some point, we've all had our favorite song, and how we got so excited when we heard that song. May we hear the Dharma, have that same excitement in our hearts as we did when we heard that song. So with that, I will close with a very appropriate reading. Geshe Langri Tamba's 8 verses on training the mind. And here, this is trying to shoot the arrow at the target of the self-centered attitude, the self-cherishing attitude. And all of the mind training texts are just working at, the 7-point thought transformation. Banish the one to blame for everything. What's the one to blame for everything? The self-cherishing attitude. And it's, we would say this in the mind training is very interesting, because in the mind training, we see the grasping at true establishment of the I, then causing the self-cherishing and kind of driving one another and being the core causes of all of our lack of happiness. We see that the I grasp at self as I and mine, and then I become attached to me. I cherish me. That's what self-cherishing is, by the way. You grasp at yourself as I. Okay, I'm Jeff, and now you become obsessed with you attach to yourself. I'm Jeff. Oh, I'm Jeff. Wow, I'm more important than everyone else. So that's we grasp it at the self, and then we say, this is mine, right? So this is what we need to turn in the mind training. We get into emptiness, and we put it alongside this kind of selfishness, and show how this grasping itself happens, and then we become attached to ourselves. And how this attachment to self, this cherishing self, is what causes us to react in ways that always end up bad in terms of their result. Okay, 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. With a determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all, and respectively hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and like, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one whom I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns. By understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. Now, as stated before, imagine all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the gurus and lamas in space all around us, as we've been trying to hold through this teaching. But just a good reminder, before we do our dedication, our mandala offering, let's imagine all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the space and all the holy beings in the space and all sentient beings around us that we mentioned before, that we're leading, and we're dedicating all this virtue to becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And we're imagining that all sentient beings are thinking the same thing and reciting the same thing. And all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are so happy, and that they're showering us with a rain of blessings of light rays and nectars and so forth that are white and red and blue. And we imagine they're purifying our body, speech, and mind, and purifying all sentient beings, body, speech, and mind. If you want, you can imagine everybody has an Om, Ah, Hum. Also, all of you and all sentient beings, but we needn't get too complicated with visualizations. But you could imagine that those light rays are purifying Om, white, Ah, red, and Hum, blue. From the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, showering you a rain of blessings as you're dedicating these virtues to becoming Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings, with all sentient beings doing the same around you. Okay, so that's that. And let's hold that visualization for a second. All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in space in front of us and all sentient beings all around us. They're so happy, they're showering us with a rain of blessings. And let's make that mandala offering. Imagining the mandala offering, making the offering to the teacher all the way to back to Buddha Shakyamuni, and imagine that this pure, perfect land is also being offered to all these holy beings. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso. May you stay until samsara's end. Everyone, don't forget, speaking of His Holiness staying till samsara's end, he's teaching tonight. He was taught last night. He's teaching 9th chapter of Shanti Deva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. He started it last night, and then he's teaching it tonight as well. I think it starts at 10:30. Put the YouTube thing on Dalai Lama Live and click on the date and leave it sitting there because he may start early. He's been known to do that, even 45 minutes early. So you can do that. And then tomorrow night, definitely stay tuned. Tune in for the Avalokiteshvara initiation, 1,000 arm he's giving. And it's Dalai Lama says, if you're there live with him, not on a record playback, live with him, and you're taking the initiation on the video, that you're getting the actual initiation. And the 1,000 arm Chen Rezig initiation is so important. If you want to do the practice is perfect. You know how we get the blessings, the jenangs, and the initiations? Truly, 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 to be able to practice the jenangs, the blessings, we should have a full initiation into whatever class of Tantra that is. So this gives us an opportunity to get that full initiation. If I misspoke about that, it is a full initiation. I apologize, a full empowerment, a Wang, but I believe it is a Wang. So it allows you to practice then any of the jenangs, the blessings within Action Tantra by getting that Wang. So just a wonderful little point. Dalai Lama's teachings, go to Dalai Lama's website. You'll see the live links and so forth, or you can just go to YouTube and type in Dalai Lama live today, and it'll come up and you'll press on it and it'll start a countdown. So and then I want to just make an aspiration that in all our lives, may we never be separated from Khyentse Geshe Wandak in whatever form he or she chooses to emanate. May we meet with him or her in the emanation body, in this world that we abide in. And may we also meet when we become Arya Bodhisattvas, the enjoyment body, the Sambhokaya that he emanates from the Dharmakaya. And then may we eventually become Buddhas and help Khyentse Geshe Wandak with his work to free all sentient beings from suffering. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate all of you. Please try to practice the Dharma in your daily life. Please try to put these teachings into your mind and let them change you, which will help change this world. This world's really so hard and has so much suffering in it right now. And everybody will have to meet with death. There's no club that gets to not meet with that. So let's try to do something while we are here for the betterment of ourselves and others. And that's my wish. Thank you.